Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching another episode of Creative Lightroom. This week I'm going to show you how to create a split tone black and white image. Now, split toning is a really beautiful technique. It takes your standard black and white image and in the shadows it gives one colour, but in the highlights you get a completely different colour. Now it's worth noting you can do this on colour pictures as well, but I think it looks best on black and whites. So to do it is really straightforward. In fact, Lightroom has a tool just for split toning, but making it work, that can be a little bit of a challenge. So let's jump into Lightroom and see how it's done. So I've got a picture here that is perfect for split toning, and it's perfect for a couple of reasons. First of all, we've got plenty of difference between the shadows and highlights. We've got some great highlight detail coming through the window and some highlights here on top of the table. But also it works really well because this is a timeless picture, and split toning is one of those sort of vintage retro effects that works fantastically on timeless images. So what we're going to do first of all is to remove the color and go to black and white. And we can do that by changing from HSL stroke color stroke B and W. Let's just drop that down, and I'm going to click on the B and W button, black and white, and that will reset us to black and white. Let's just put everything back to its default settings. So once we're in black and white, we can start to move things around and change things about. If you want to just quickly move things about, then you can always grab the little adjustment button here, the adjustment brush, and what I can do is just say, well, okay, with those greens underneath that part of the picture, I just want to tweak the greens a little bit. Everything is kind of red, so let's grab a bit of floor and we'll just tweak the reds a little bit. So we can tweak that to get a nice black and white picture. Okay, once we've done that, we're going to jump down to split toning, and that's where the magic's going to happen. And you'll find there are two sets of sliders here, one for highlights and one for shadows. Now I know what you're thinking, it's going to be dead easy. All you're going to do is you're just going to move the sliders around for the shadows and the highlights, job done. But there's a little gotcha with this particular tool, and if you don't know about it, it can really make it weirdly hard to use. So the gotcha is this. What you want to do is you want to move the saturation first. So let's go down to the shadows and I'll move the saturation first and then I'll get some colour. If you don't do that, if you just move the hue around, it won't matter where you put the hue, you won't have any change to your picture whatsoever. So remember, saturation first and then move the hue slider around. Now, if the idea is you only want to do a single tone, let's just say you want to do a sepia tone only, the classic sepia look, only put it in the shadows, because that's how sepia used to work. It used to absorb into the shadows if you were doing it in the old darkroom. However, we're going to do a split tone, and for a split tone I'm going to apply not only shadows but highlights. So I'm just going to double click on the word shadows to reset them, and let's start on the highlights. Remember to put some saturation in first, and I'm going to put it to around about mid-30s so I can see what's happening. Then I'm going to move the hue, so I'm going to put this to, well, not around about, I'm going to be very specific. It's going to be 50. 50 for the hue. So that adds a nice sepia tone to the highlights and slightly into the shadows as well. Just reset the balance just so we keep everything back to normal. However, for the shadows I want to add a very different tone of colour. So coming down to the shadows, remembering to add some saturation first, I'm then going to change the hue, but I know I want a bluey shadow and a browny sepia highlight. But what blue? There's loads of blues. Which one is the best one to use? Well, there's a little bit of maths that just makes that really simple. You've got to take the value for the highlight hue, which is 50, and add 180. That gets me up to 230. Obviously, if you started with a high value for the highlight hue, you would take off 180. Okay, and that gives me the perfect balance between the colour of the highlights and the colour of the shadows. You might want to change the saturation, so you may want to bump up the strength on both of these. They don't have to be the same strength, but that gives a great balance in tones. Speaking of balance, there is a balance slider here, and what this does is it says to Lightroom, make more of the tones highlights or make more of the tones shadows. So as I bring it to the left, we get more shadows and then highlights, and I go the other way, I can say okay, yes, something like that gives me more brown in the picture because more things are being classed as highlights. One more thing to do, and that is just to jump down to the effects button here, and I'm going to add some post-crop vignetting just to show you how that will affect the picture as well. Now if I increase the post-crop vignetting, notice it gets brighter on the edges, but the brighter colour is sepia. It's a highlight. If I darken the edges, notice it gets darker, but the darker colour is a blue. As you can see down here, we've got this blue creeping in. That's a shadow. So not only does the shadows and highlights in split toning affect the split toning, but it will affect everything in the picture, including any vignetting. So let's just put a small amount of vignetting just to add to that vintage feel. And there you go. There is my split tone image completed. Now, split toning is one of the most beautiful effects you can do. It can really enhance a black and white picture, and I think it looks gorgeous. Now, if you want to find out more about me, don't forget to visit my website at www.gavtrain.com. Alternatively, you can join me again right here next week for another Creative Lightroom. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.